everybody. Welcome to NJ Thrive's Small Business Webinars. Today is Tuesday, April 2nd, and you are attending one of our weekly webinars created to help New Jersey small business owners start, grow, and thrive. If you are new here, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you continue to stay with us and enjoy our webinars. If you have been attending our webinars, thank you so much for your support. We always appreciate it. Continue to attend them. My name is Uzma Sheikh. I'm a consultant here at NJSBDC. And what that stands for New Jersey Small Business Development Centers Network. We're a statewide program powered by the SBA, stands for Small Business Administration, and partners like NJBAC and such to help small businesses in New Jersey with three main things. And those are no-cost small business consulting, training and events starting at $0, and exclusive small business resources. If you look at the map on the slide, that is, of course, the state of New Jersey with all the counties. In some of the counties, you'll notice there's small SBC logos, and that's where our physical regional centers are located. So in person, if you ever want to go, say hi, go for an event or workshop happening, or go meet a consultant in person. Of course, you would have to make an appointment, but our 10 regional centers are located throughout the state of New Jersey. Go to NJSBDC.com, check them out, and make an appointment. So the webinar that you're attending here today is part of a multi-session webinar series. We started this back in November when we felt there was a need to show our aspiring entrepreneurs on how to register your business with our NJSBDC support. So here we are 6 months later, and we're continuing this, and it's proven to be valuable and helpful for entrepreneurs. So we will continue to do this and hope that you continue to attend. Now, what is on the agenda? We have a couple of headlines. Then we have our presentation from our speaker and a Q&A session after. So these are the small business headlines of the week, and I will show them on my screen. After I'm done sharing my screen, I will share the links. I will go through them very briefly. The first one is from the SBA, again, Small Business Administration, a great resource for small business entrepreneurs. Always keep checking the website, especially the news and the article search. So this press release is released on March 29th, so a couple of days ago. SBA Administrator Guzman announces 17 new women's business centers. 13 of the new WBCs will be hosted by minority serving institutions. And let's see, what are the important details? Across 10 states. So all the 17 centers will be across 10 states. And okay, here it's listed. So full list of new WBCs, not the already existing ones. So California, Connecticut, Washington, D.C., all 10 are listed here. To find other WBC locations and additional SBA resources, visit this link over here. Feel free to check this out on where exactly these WCCs are located. And here's some information about the demographics and the loan amounts given to women-owned businesses, up to 61%, totaling more than $5 billion in lending in fiscal year of 2023 alone. Pretty cool numbers. All right, next is a press release from NJEDA, New Jersey Economic Development Authority, also another great resource for small business owners. Always check this website. They have they continuously update with loans, loan programs, grant, things like that. Released on March 28th, NJEDA to open applications for Atlantic City Food Security Grants Program. We've shared information about this before as well. This is in connection to Atlantic City Food Security Grants Pilot Program on Tuesday, April 2nd, so today at 10 a.m. The application deadline is Wednesday, May 15th at 5 p.m. The $5.25 million pilot program is part of a broader initiative to expand food access in Atlantic City. They will provide grants ranging from $50,000 to $500,000 to fund projects to strengthen food security across Atlantic City. They can be used to direct or indirect project cost and may cover 100% of the proposed cost. Who, what, when, why, all the information was listed. Even though the application, started today, there is more information here. So again, grants will be made to the highest scoring eligible applications, not in a first come, first served manner. So if you're interested, go to this link when it's provided in the chat below and then click here to learn more and apply. Third is also a press release from NJEDA released just yesterday. NJEDA releases a request for information for development of a statewide employee ownership program. So this is not beginning of an application or anything. It's a RFI, request for information, seeking insight from firms and individuals with perspectives on the proven best practices, potential challenges, and appropriate considerations relevant to the employee ownership program. Again, what, who, when, why, all of that information. All questions must be submitted in writing no later than 5 p.m. on April 8th via email to this, how they want it, how it should read, all the information. It's all shared there. Let me just quickly go back to my slideshow. Again, the links will be shared in the chat. Just keep a lookout. So some housekeeping rules for everyone to follow. Things to keep in mind. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. Otherwise, put any comments or concerns or other questions, non-speaker related questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. And the speaker will answer all the questions related to the presentation towards the end in the Q&A session. If you would like to receive the slides, then please complete a brief survey. It's a Google form survey, and once you complete it, you'll receive the link. It's a Google Slides link, so you'll be able to click on it and view it on your own time. This webinar is being recorded, and the link will be shared in the chat on where you can view it, how you can view it. And feel free to share in the chat if anything about yourself or your business that you'd like to the audience to know. So anything about the your small business, social media, things like that, feel free to let us know. I did receive just a message in the chat. Your sound is low. If anyone is also experiencing that, please let me know. All right, so enough from me. We have Ryan Silvestre today, who's a Capital Team Consultant. And today is, of course, part of the webinar series, Streamline Your Startup NJSBDC's Business Registration Guide. So I will stop sharing. Nope, going back to that. And Ryan, the stage is yours. Please let me know if my audio was low or if everything's good. Is it slow?
I don't know, or maybe my audio might be low.
I'm hearing you okay. So
yeah,
if anyone's having problems, then quickly exit and then come back.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. All right, guys. Awesome. I am back. I just did this, was it 2 weeks ago? I think it was, Uzma, maybe?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I would like to say I'm back by popular demand, but I'm just a boring substitute teacher. So let's just jump right into this. Let's get into my shared screen. And all right, welcome, guys. We're going to be talking about how to start your business. Now, this is going to be just on some of the steps to get the company registered. Obviously, there is a lot more that goes into starting a business than just doing the actual steps to get yourself registered. So make sure you guys work with an SBDC consultant to work through your business plan, your financial models, whatever your goal happens to be, whether you want to build a company to sell it, build a company for passive income, build a franchise. All those require small different steps in the planning process. But once we get all that straightened out, this is what we're going to be doing. So this is the registration process. And my advice is always to make sure you do this at the end after you actually plan out your company. Because while you're planning your company, some of the decisions that you might make, such as, do I want to do business just in New Jersey? Do I want to do business, in 2 states, 3 states? Do I want to have 2 partners or 500 partners? Those all make an impact on what type of business entity we do, and then how this will look like. But let's just jump right into it. So this is a little bit of an agenda as to what we're going to be discussing today at a very high level. Again, once you reach out to an SBDC consultant, they can do a deep dive into any of these or anything that's very specific to you guys. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different business structures. We're going to focus on the most popular one, which is the limited liability company, or the LLC. But we'll do a brief mention of some of the other ones that do get mentioned quite often. We'll talk about the process to get it formed, and registered. There is a difference between incorporation and registration, which we'll get into in a little bit. Understanding the state regulations and taxes that pertain to your specific business, because they don't, not all of the rules are universal. And obviously the most important part, bias, because I'm part of the capital team, is how do we get the company funded? How do we keep the cash flow coming through so that we can continue to grow? And then obviously we'll go into all the additional needs and things that we should do post-registration. So we'll start off with the sole proprietorship. There is a spectrum of business entities, and the biggest difference between what sits on the left side of that spectrum all the way to the right side of that spectrum is how much protection we're getting, generally in two categories: how much protection we're getting in tax liability and how much protection we're getting in legal liability. There is a little bit of a seesaw. So once I give up a little bit of protection, I get a lot more of something else, and vice versa. So it all depends on, again, the unique needs that my business has. Every legal entity does have its unique allowances or abilities. For example, some might allow you to do business across the entire country, while others might let you do business, just in your region, or, even internationally. So it all depends on what we're looking for. But again, the main difference for most of us, especially in the beginning, is our tax structure and our legal structure. With a sole proprietorship, you and the business are virtually one and the same. So there is very little separation of your personal assets and the assets of the business. That's a little bit on the dangerous side. On the good side is that it's perhaps one of the simplest forms to file for taxes. You and the business, are one and the same. So your personal income is your business income, and the process is a bit more streamlined. It's usually done at your county clerk's office, so it's done by county, and the process is very seamless, and it's easy. Now, my personal advice, and this is just a very general advice, so take it with a grain of salt, is that the sole proprietorship generally is for businesses that are either very, very low risk, and is a I'm not going to say a part-time job, but it's for businesses that are not very it's not going to be it's not, I'm not sure how to phrase it exactly, but it's more for business where you're going to be doing something on the side, or again, at very low risk. I'm not your attorney, so I can't give you legal advice as to which one to choose. But these are the questions that you would then bring to either your consultant or your attorney, your accountant, which one fits best for my personal needs. On the other side of the spectrum, you have the one on the bottom, which is the corporation. The corporation is a separate entity. So you have its own set of, you will have its own set of books for financials. It's not just another schedule on your tax return. And it has its own liabilities as well. It does give you a lot more freedom with where I can sell and what I can sell, but not necessarily on the taxation side. So one of the big fears that most people talk about with corporations is that I get taxed twice. I get taxed on what the company makes, and then after the company pays me, or I take my distributions or my profits from the company, I have to pay taxes again on the amount of money that hits my personal pocket. There are ways to avoid that, which I'll go into in the next slide. But again, depending on what we need to do, the corporation might be a good fit for us, might not. Now, the one that is the most common, the one that kind of is the one size fits all approach, is the LLC. That's the limited liability company. Now, this one fits right in the middle between that spectrum. It gives you kind of the benefits of the sole proprietorship of being taxed just once on income that's generated by the company, because it's an extension. It's a pass. It's what they call a pass-through entity. So the money that goes through the company passes through my personal taxes. So I only get taxed once on it. That's still one of the benefits. And then there are some limits with the liability. So with the corporation where everything's separate, if I have a problem with one of the companies that are corporations, and I got hurt, the lawsuit finishes at the corporation. With the limits of liability, because I am an extension, or my limits of liability is an extension of my company, or of me. There are some personal liabilities, but again, they put limits on them. So that's why I call limited liability company. The process to make the LLC is fairly simple. Could take maybe about an hour, hour and a half. Some things to know, it does have a one-time fee of $125, a yearly fee of $75 for your what's called a good standing certificate, to make sure everything is in place. With all these companies, you do need to have an EIN number. Just general good business practice, like it says here, have a separate bank account, and let's see, owner can choose. So that bullet point there about owners can choose a single member, Schedule C, 1065, for a partnership, or 1120 if you want to do it as what's called the Schedule S, or as corporation subchapter S, which we'll get into the next slide. Those are questions that you really want to have with your accountant or with your consultant to see which of the different taxing options are the best one for your particular situation. But that is it's difficult to say that this is the one size fits all. Even LLCs, it's not always one size fits all. Something that's important to note is that with any of these companies, you're not choosing one that you're going to stick with forever. As the company grows and evolves, so will your legal entity structure. So it might be possible that you start off as just a New Jersey business, and then in the next couple of years, you went national. So you might want to go into a corporation to allow you to do business nationally, which I'll get into again in a little bit, because there are some questions with that we get quite often. On the corporation side, there are different types of corporations, but they're not necessarily different entities. They're different tax allowances or tax designations. S Corp is perhaps one of the most popular ones. So S Corps give you the ability, generally speaking, so that, the most popular reason why most people will go to an S Corp when they choose corporation is because it gives you the ability to reduce your taxes by saying that what I'm going to pay myself, or the owners are going to pay themselves, and they're technically called members, but the members are going to pay themselves, is just taxed once, because they give themselves a preset salary in the beginning of the year. That would be one of the major benefits of having a corporation subchapter S. There are subchapter Cs and subchapter Bs, but they're all dependent upon what you need out of your company. What do you need your company to do? Which is the homework that I was talking about before we actually start the registration process. Now, let me read through some of these, because I think some of these are pretty important to note. The S Corp filing indicates that there's a change in the tax status for some corporations to avoid corporate double taxation, which is what I was just referring to right now. S Corp permits under the tax code to pass taxable income credits, deductions, losses, thereby losses directly to its shareholders. Again, similar to what I was just talking about. This one I did not mention. S Corp is available to small businesses with 100 or fewer shareholders. So if you want to raise capital for your company, and you want to offer equity in exchange for that capital that you're raising, which is a very common tactic for a lot of the larger companies, or just larger ideas, with an S Corp, you are limited to 100 shareholders or 100 people, which sounds like a lot at first, but if you have grand vision for the company where revenue can justify 100 shareholders, that is something to consider. If we're looking at past 100, that's when we go into the C Corps. C Corps are generally your larger companies, the ones that are publicly traded could be a C Corp. Now, the other way to get C Corp, benefits is to have your LLC taxed as a C Corp. So you're not making a corporation subchapter S, you're making an LLC, and you're recognizing, or the IRS is recognizing that it's going to be taxed as an LLC. again, to get some of those benefits. So LLCs offer more flexibility than the corporations with respect to the structure and distribution of the profits, but maybe there might be tax advantages to LLC owners that are taxed as an S corp. So it's the same thing of what I was just mentioning. Those are perhaps some of the biggest benefits of considering S corp, if that is an option for you guys. Let's see. Once we start the registration process, so once we know that we're going to choose LLC or LLC registered as an S corp, these are the steps. But again, this is just for the LLC process, and the reason we're going to LLC is it's by far the most popular option for most businesses. And like I said, you can start off as an LLC, and if the company needs additional allowances or it needs a little bit more out of its entity, then we can choose one of the other companies. So some of the bullet points that were written here. Yeah, it says you do not pay a third party. You can do this yourself, but my general piece of advice is always do your homework first. Just because I can change my oil doesn't always mean that I should. Just because I can do this doesn't mean that I should, especially not if I don't do any homework before getting to the actual work stage. I need to prepare for it. It is very relatively easy. It just needs a little bit of prep, and so I'm just kind of reminding people don't jump straight into it, because there are a few mistakes that I have seen. I've been with the SBDC for about maybe 20 years now, 15 years. And there are about 15 years, and there are quite a number of people who I look at their articles of formation, and there are steps that were missing because they jumped into it right away without doing some homework, initially. Your NJSBDC counselor will be able to guide you through the formation process at no cost to you. And that's why the title of the presentation was at no cost. Very important, some of the terminology. There are words that are very specific to this world, or at least to this process. For example, I mentioned before owners, but then I jumped in and said, that in this world, they're called members. That's one of the, terminologies that, that we might become familiar with. Another common one is it's a registered agent. Registered agent simply means, the person or the entity that will receive official documentation and is on public records representing the company. That could be you, that could be somebody you assign, like an attorney or an accountant, or even a registered agent company. Some of the tools that I think you guys can look at to become familiar with some of the items that are needed to do this are these two. NJ Portal. If we click on NJ Portal, this is any official business from the state of New Jersey. But if we go down to the business section, which is, did we just pass it? Yep, here it is. These are some resources. Some of them are important for us to know in the very beginning. Some of them are not related to our business at all. So we don't need to do cigarette licensing. We don't it's not really important for us. But I do want to spend a moment on the name search. So the name search is, I think, something that's commonly misunderstood. Once you pick a name for your company, especially if you have an emotional investment into your name, this is just one of the websites that you should go to, depending on what your vision is. If I plan on staying in New Jersey, this is fine. We click business name search. It takes us to a page where we can see if the name is available for us to use in New Jersey. But again, it's only in New Jersey. If you have visions of growing your company outside of New Jersey lines, you might want to check out what's called uspto.gov. That's US for United States, PTO, Patent Trade Office.gov. And that website will let you know what trademarks or patents or copyrights have been issued to different companies around the country. So if you choose a name that was already chosen by another company in Texas, let's say, or Florida, California, and you wanted to franchise your business, you wanted to have potential, online presence, and you don't want any market confusion of who's the owner of this company, I strongly advise that you get that name protected at the national level as well, especially if you're planning on growing outside the state of New Jersey. So your name is only protected as an LLC inside the state, not outside the state. So somebody can go into New York or Florida or Pennsylvania right next door and copy the name and a lot of the processes legally, because LLCs give you protection within the states. We want to make sure that that we're aware of what we want to do, what trajectory do we want the business to go into, and then take the the appropriate actions to make sure that we can grow with the least amount of friction. And just one last moment on the name. When we do choose a name, the name is protected within an industry. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with Dove Ice Cream and Dove Soap, two different companies that have the same exact name because they're protected within their relative industry. So it's just food for thought, and make sure you discuss this before you get to this stage. And then there's also the marketing elements of it too. How does the name sound? It's easy to remember, across the entire country, across different cultures. So after we become familiar with some of these, we go into business formation and business registration. This is actually where we get the first steps for registering our business. This is the site that we land on for actually incorporating our LLC. It's pretty simple. Select, these are all the reference tools that you need, but this is where we start. And then this process here is maybe 15-20 minutes. After we do this, then we go back into the IRS website, which is on the presentation, and get our tax ID number. So your federal employer identification number, or, some people call it FEIN number or EIN or tax ID, same thing, all comes from the IRS. The fee that exists is only at this stage over here. It's only one time for New Jersey. Once we go to the IRS website and get our tax ID at a federal level, this part is free, but this part will have much more, many more questions about your business, what you're going to be selling, how you're going to be selling, who your customers are, to get a good idea of what kind of taxes they expect to be collecting from you guys. And the third step is we go back to the portal over here, which is this website, and we combine the two. That's the most important step. We want to make sure that the corporate ID that we get from this step right here is linked to the tax ID that we get from this step over here. Once those two are connected, that's when you are registered for taxes in New Jersey, and that's when you can actually start officially selling your product and or your service. Again, but these are all the homework things that we're going to be doing in the meantime before we actually get to the registration process. Understanding your application and legal requirements is essential. Do you pay taxes quarterly, or is it okay if you can get away with it doing it once a year? Do I charge a sales tax on all the items that I sell, or is it on some of the items that I sell? Those are all things that we need to look at, before actually starting the registration process. Let's see. This is just a good business practice. I do this consistently. All my documents are organized. I like to use a cloud-based software. There's a bunch of services out there that you can store your information on the cloud, including even a lot of bookkeeping that is all cloud-based. That way we can access it from any computer, and we can give access to any advisor or professional that's on our team, our accountants, our attorneys, to make sure that our EIN number is there, our CID or corporate ID number is there as well, because those numbers will be asked every once in a while from your business. For example, when you open up a bank account, or when you submit a bid for a contract, those numbers will be asked. And then bookkeeping, like I just mentioned. So bookkeeping is perhaps the heart of your administration of your business, to make sure that we are constantly profitable and in line of what our target goal happens to be. Okay. So once we actually have the company registered and we have the tax ID number, that's where this is reminding you, make sure you tie the two. That tax ID and that CID need to be connected, and that's through the registration process. That's this link over here, but we can get that through the link that we were just at before. That's when we are registering the business, and I'll click on it so you guys can take a look at it. same website that we were on a little while ago. But we're going to, in order to do this, we need, as it says here, your business ID and your tax ID, you know. Well, you know, or corporate ID, this is your tax ID right here. So those are two things. Added homework is your codes. So during your registration process, and I just saw this and I forgot to mention it before, but during your registration process, they will ask you for 2 different codes to identify the exact type of service or product that you are selling. One code comes from NICS or your NICS code. The other one comes straight from New Jersey. It's the same thing, just asking it from 2 different perspectives, but it will speed up or make the process easier if you do these before starting the registration process. So if I click on one of these, you know, I'll show you real quickly. I can type in here what I'm doing. I'm in the pizza industry, or I'm a pizzeria. So I just write pizza, and it will start to show all the different potential codes that could relate to me. So what I do at this point is I read the description, and once I click on it, it gives me a better detailed description of what it actually is, and does this pertain to me? If so, then that's the code that I'm going to be using. You know, this is the NICS code. For the other one, the New Jersey Business Code, it's a PDF. So this one I have to kind of skim and scan a little bit. It's broken up into different sections, as you see here. Broken up into different sections. All the manufacturing ones are here, and then we'll end here. And then it starts with the business service code. So I look for the one that pertains to me, and then I copy that code on the side. That code will be asked during the process. If you do this before starting the registration process, it makes things much easier. Okay, and let's go back to the presentation. Okay. And then new for this year, BOI. BOI has gotten a lot of attention. And what this is the federal government's effort to have more transparency on who the owners of these companies are and who's benefiting from these companies. It doesn't cost anything to do, but we do have to file an additional form. It's simple and doesn't have an additional cost. And it says, who are the owners of the company? You know, it's a little bit more than that, but it's not much more. It's pretty easy. It's important to know that there are some deadlines for the BOI registration. If the company was formed before January 1st, 2024, you have until next year, January 1st, 2025, to register it. If you guys are registering the company for the first time this year, you will have 90 days to from the date of completion of your registration to do this beneficial ownership information. And if you do it, I think it's after next year, after January 1st, 2025, this has to be done within 30 days. You know, so it's this is, again, it's just for national security, and it's at no cost, additional cost to you guys. Okay, so let's go back to here. Let's see. For registration and formation of the LLC, let's see. Oh, yep. So some basic steps of what I was talking about before. What is your name in New Jersey? You know, I kind of covered that already. You know, things, you know, yeah. So these are things that I just covered. So employer identification number, to make sure you get this before you start it. It's easy, it's free. You know, your NICS code, which is what I just mentioned also as well, and your New Jersey industry code as well. Select or give thought to who your registered agent is going to be. I am my own registered agent for my companies. So, but for some people, they have reasons to give that responsibility to somebody else. So discuss it with, again, your accountant, your team of advisors, you know, your attorney, find out who should be your registered agent, if anybody else should be besides you. An operating agreement, especially if it's a multi-member LLC. The operating agreement kind of gives a rule book to how the different people in the company are going to interact and what their responsibilities are. It's very similar to almost like a prenuptial agreement. It says, these are your roles, these are my roles, and these are, more importantly, the corrective actions in case something happens. You know, and those corrective actions could be internal, could be also part of a potential pivot plan, but it's very important to give a little bit of attention. It's not a legal requirement, it's just good advice. It's just very good business practice. The cost to have, right? This is between you and the state of New Jersey is $125, and then there is a $3.50 processing fee if you use, I think, a credit card. And your information that you need to have ready on hand, your name, address, social, and percentage ownership of all the members if you have multiple members within your company. Again, give thought to this. When you take on a business partner, you and them do share liability and do share some of the benefits, but give thought to how the person is going to be creating value for your company. For example, if you guys are seeking capital and want to apply for a loan, does anybody who have, generally speaking, more than 10% equity in the company, their names are going to be on the application for the loan as well. So that's something that's important to note. So if you have a business partner and that partner has little to no credit, as an example, or has some credit challenges, and you're giving them 25, 30% of the company, their name is going to be on the application as well. And the bank is going to take their background in consideration for making that decision on whether they should extend credit to you or not. So it's something to be very mindful of. Let's see, what will you need to know? These are the items. These are the items that I was mentioning should be discussed with your accountant and or tax attorney on which one the right fit is for you. This is, how do I want to be taxed? Those are the ones I mentioned before. Schedule C, single member LLC is just, recognizing what the bottom line was of the LLC that hits the top line of my Schedule C. And then I recognize that income. If I have partners, the 1065 is perhaps be kind of the go-to. And if I want to be taxed as a S corp, you have 1120 and 1120S. Those are the ones that that allow me to be taxed as a corporation. Each one has benefits to different people, different individuals in different situations. Know if your sale of the good or service is subject to New Jersey state tax. Again, there is a tax form that I can share with you guys if you want, that shows all the different products and services, or I should say at least the most common products and services, and it shows whether it's taxable or not taxable. And it's not always obvious. There are some products that if it's done in this fashion, it's taxable, but if it's done in that fashion, the same exact product, no, it's no longer taxable. So depending on what the item is, it could be packaged. I think coconut oil might be a good example. If it's used for cosmetics, or if it's used, if it's being promoted as a I don't know, home cleaning agent, or as a food item. Same product being packaged different ways could have different tax implications. So let's see. Know if your business requires additional registration certificates. Yep, that's crucial. So there is on that New Jersey portal page another link where it'll say what permits and permits or certificates do I need to do my business. In some cases, some of those certificates or permits are required, and others, it just makes you, gives you an advantage when selling your product, especially if you're going after contracts. So it's a good idea to kind of visit, what requirements do I need, and or what benefits can I get if I do elect to take the certificate on. And identify the business bank, have a business bank account. These are, again, not a essential requirement, it's not a legal requirement, but it is a very, very strong business practice, or a good business practice that you should implement. So it's very difficult to grow your business if you don't have a dedicated business bank account, and you could also get yourself in trouble for not being able to clearly distinguish between dollars that are being spent on the business versus dollars that are being spent on you as an individual. So, we want to make sure that there's separation of those two. Resources for different regulations and taxes. Let's see, I think one of the ones that I might have mentioned might be here. It might be this one. Let's double check. Yep. So this is the one that I was referring to a little while ago. What licenses or certifications do I need for my business? So here, as I start to go through the guide, it'll let me know these are the licenses or registrations or certificates, that you will need to do your business in the state of New Jersey. And these are, again, at the state of New Jersey level. So it always depends on where I am in the country, what permits and registrations do I need. Let's see, state tax requirements. Oh, this is the PDF that I was talking about. Perfect. Okay. So on this one, it will show you all the different products and services that you could potentially sell, or at least the most common ones. And if I go down, you'll start to see it. Yep, here we go. So these are the different ones, and I'll tell you if it's exempt or if it's taxable. That's what the E means. And in some cases, you will find the same one that's both taxable and exempt. It depends on the use. So it's very important to go through this because you need to know, am I going to charge sales tax, or because you're still going to have to pay sales tax, but you want to pass it on to your customer. Let's see, income tax requirements. Let's see, take a look at this one as well. Too many tabs open on my side, but so these are taxes is a bit complex. So I would strongly advise for you to work with an accountant to make sure that you go through all this, especially if you're hiring somebody. Payroll taxes could get very complex, as well as other taxes that you would pay for your business. But it does make a lot of sense for you to become familiar with what the guidelines are for my business so that I know how to interpret the data as I receive the data. So this is a personal opinion, and it's a very strong personal opinion. You should become very familiar, especially in the beginning, with all the elements of your business, all the different sides of your business, but not so that you run that department. You want to delegate it to either a person on the inside that you hired or a professional on the outside that you also hired. The idea is that once they present to you the information from their findings, you can then make a more intelligent decision based on the information because you have a more, more intimate knowledge of that data. What I see very often is bookkeepers and accountants will prepare financial statements, but a lot of business owners don't really know how to read it outside of the obvious. Is there a profit at the bottom line? How much money did I spend in marketing or my cost of goods sold? But they can't really put together a story from the taxes. So what ends up happening is that they don't know how to make decisions that are very impactful for their business to get to their goal, for next year. One of my favorite quotes came from Jeff Bezos that says, if I spend a day working at Amazon, it's a day that Amazon doesn't grow. Because your job as a leader is to make the decisions that will take your company to the next level. And as quickly as I can start to delegate those processes, that's as quickly as my company can start to really grow. It's very difficult for us to wear all the different hats in our companies. But anyway, again, more payroll, processes and information resources down here. Same thing with, your different ways of hiring people and your, workers' insurance. So these are all different elements that we're going to be, we need to be mindful of before growing the company. So one of the most popular questions is, where are the dollars? Where do we get some startup capital or operating capital in order to grow the company? And that's the part of the team that I'm a part of. Generally, I work with some of the more larger established companies, but the logic is always going to be the same, which is, do we have enough the right financial tools in order to fill in the right financial needs? Just because I have access to capital doesn't mean always that I should take it. A quick little side note that that's worth noting is long-term debt has to have match with long-term assets. Short-term debts have to match with short-term assets. That means if I'm getting a certain type of money, it has to be used in that right way. So I can't use a line of credit or a credit card to pay for an employee. I'm sorry, not to pay, to buy long-term assets is what I meant to say. So that's when a business advisor or a consultant comes on board and says, what do you need money for? That first step is going to be what's called the use of proceeds. That use of proceeds says, I need to buy the following items, or I need to have this much money in operating, working capital as an example. Then your finance advisors will come in and say, these are the right financial tools that will be matched up with each type of asset. It's not one loan for everything. It's usually partitioned out into working capital on the side to satisfy cash flow shortfalls. And if you want to buy equipment, then we'll match it up with equipment financing, because your cost of capital, if you do it this way, will be reduced. And then your bottom line, your profit at the end of the day, will be a little bit larger because we're matching the right tools to the right job. You can't always use one tool for all the different jobs. So always start with the use of proceeds, which will be part of your business plan. It's actually the first page on your financial plan, which is how much money is this costing me? And then from there, how much money am I able to bring into this? And then the rest of it will be brought in by other tools. There are lots of startup loans. There are lots of loans for every different category, but everyone has their own limitations as to what they could be used for and how they could be used. For example, you can't borrow money to pay the owner, but you can borrow money to pay for salaries. Little things like that we need to be mindful of. If anybody has any questions there in the next few moments during the Q&A, we'll I'll address some of these questions. Let's see. Very important to note in this category, noteworthy, 5 elements. 5 elements always have to be brought to the table to see what funding opportunities exist and how much and what the terms and conditions of that funding is going to be. I call it the 5 C's of lending. The first one is going to be your credit. I saw this and it reminded me of it. Your credit, which is how you paid bills in the past. Doesn't mean you have to have great credit to qualify. It just means show me what you've been able to handle in the past, and then I'll give you something along those lines. So your credit, your compensation, which is going to be the cash flow of you today, combined with the cash flow of the business tomorrow. So that will be the projections. Collateral, what kind of guarantees exist. It doesn't mean that we have to own houses and big pieces of expensive equipment in order to qualify. But in some cases, just the down payments, like as example, SBA loans will never deny you because of lack of collateral. So if you say, hey, I'm willing to put 10%, 20% of the total cost out of my own pocket, I have skin in the game, that makes enough lenders content enough to continue the conversation. So the equity that you put into it could be part of that collateral. And the last 2 are conditions and character. Those 2 are very specific to the world of business. Conditions is what's happening in the world, good or bad, and what are we doing about it? How are we taking advantage of the good things? How are we preparing for the bad things? That is part of your business plan. And character is, who are you? What's your professional business background, and why are you a good match for the company? Put those 5 elements together, present it to a finance consultant, an accountant, an SBDC advisor, and they'll be able to match you with the right dollars. Yeah, like I mentioned before, getting familiar with the financial statements, so what you're looking at is essential in order to make good decisions. But more importantly, we're going to be able to look at that information and say, these are the dollars that we can match you up with. And then just good bookkeeping practices, just bookkeeping in general. So it could be, done in an old school way, in the way it was done, by our grandparents, in the notebook. We can use Excel spreadsheets. I put everything in Excel. QuickBooks is perhaps one of the companies that's most recognized, but there's other companies out there that do the same thing. Wave Apps is another one that that does the same thing and starts at lower or no cost depending on what you guys need out of it. But there are different options out there for you guys. All right. Additional needs, always build a team. You're as good as the team and people around you. So interview a couple of accountants, attorneys, insurance agents, see which one speaks your language, culturally, economically, experience within the same industry. Find a lender that understands, your needs at that time. Some lenders are unwilling to work with new businesses. Most of the larger, more established banks tend to be a bit more careful with lending to brand new companies. So we want to make sure that we're talking to the right lenders that have the appetite for your industry, for your geography, and for your maturity of the company. Working with somebody that is understands how to communicate the product and or service to the world. That's your marketing department. As good as your product could be, it won't get any traction if I don't know about it or if I'm not reminded about it. So your marketing is the heart of what drives your business. And if you're lucky enough to have a mentor, absolutely have a mentor. Let's see. I think we're almost done. then we'll jump into the Q&A. So start preparing those questions, guys. Let's see. Next steps, opportunity. Oh, so yeah, so next steps. After the company gets registered and created, the right way with the business plan and whatnot, we can take a look at certifications. Certifications are saying, I'm going to ask for a contract as an example, government contract or a private contract. And if I get my business recognized as a minority-owned business, or as a women-owned business, as a veteran-owned business, there are certain set-asides that are created for businesses that hold these certificates. But we have to verify that if I say I'm a veteran-owned business, that I really am a veteran, and then I can start to compete against those contracts. And it's very good, again, for procurement, or government contracts. SBA lending, like I mentioned before, SBA is a great product to get you to become grade A bankable. So SBA lending is not for everybody. If I am 20 years into my business and I have all my financials at a very strong state, I might be able to go to conventional financing as opposed to SBA. SBA creates a bridge to get you to where you want to be. So it allows you to do things with a little bit less or easier requirements, is the way I should describe it. NJDA is a quasi-governmental lending agency in New Jersey. They provide a ton of resources. If you're not familiar with them, I strongly advise for you to go to the website and spend some time going through the website. Talk to us. We can guide you to the right resources on NJEDA. But they do have grants, they do have loans, they do have educational information. It's a great resource overall. And then most importantly, obviously, shameless plug, but NJSBDC. We do have a lot of resources on our YouTube page, like this video. This webinar is recorded. You guys can watch it later on, and a bunch of other webinars that we created just for our online library. And our website has a bunch of resources as well. So I think with that said, this is the next step. So obviously I'm not Vanessa, so but Vanessa is the person who normally does this. Scan this QR code and you can register for a session with her to help you register your company. And then just in general, for those who are already in business, you can scan the QR code on the bottom and get advice and assistance with whatever the task is at that moment for you guys. So I think with that said, I think we're about ready to start the Q&A session. So let's take a look at some of the questions that we have here. I'm opening up the Q&A. And I'm going from the very top and I'll start reading on the way down. Let's see.
Ryan, can I just interrupt you before you get started?
Please, yes.
Okay, so I just want to give a couple of reminders. I know you mentioned it, but I just want to mention that this webinar, of course, is being recorded. It will be available on the links that I'm providing in the chat. Also, the slides that you just presented, they will be also available as soon as our audience fills out our Google Form survey. So all you have to do is click on the links that I've shared in the chat. I will do so again, and you can receive the slides and rewatch the webinar. Also, NJSBDC.com, you've mentioned that already. That's our regular website. That's our main website. But if you'd like to talk with Vanessa and her team, the startup consultants, then you can go to njsbdc.com/startup. So that's the difference between the regular counseling and the startup counseling. We are at the 12:55 p.m. time marker, and we can run until however many questions we have or until 1:30 p.m. So I will be here in the background. Feel free to answer your questions and then let me know if you need anything, but that's all.
Usman, quick question.
Yeah.
I forget. Are the questions visible? Because I have the little dialog box that popped up with the questions.
Yes, I'm not sure if they're visible to everyone in the audience. I think they are, but yes, they're visible to both of us, and I'm pretty sure the audience the audience as well.
Well, you guys can let us know if you guys can see the questions. That way, I know if I should read the question verbatim. But I'll read the first question or two until you guys let me know.
I would suggest you do.
Okay.
And I will also highly recommend that if we have questions coming in, and I think I saw a couple where it's very nuanced, it's very detailed, then I think we should save everyone's time and recommend that the questioner be go to njsbdc.com/startup, make an appointment, and a consultant will speak to you.
Yeah.
In the interest of everyone's time.
All right. Yep. And I'll try to do my best to answer, at least in a general way, most of these
Perfect.
questions. Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get started. Question number one. If a business has been certified as an MWBE or SBE, must it be verified yearly, even though renewal is every 5 years? As far as I know, it's every 5 years. That is a good question. I would actually, Uzma, can you help look that up real quickly for us, just to see if there is a yearly requirement on that. As far as I know, it's every 5 years you have to verify that the business is a minority business or a small business enterprise. There might be some requirements on a yearly basis for some of these. I'm not quite sure if it's on a yearly basis. So some of these, just to double check, just to double down on what I was saying before. The SBE, is a small business enterprise. The MWBE, minority women business enterprise, is just making sure that the current state of the business matches what the certificate is. It's very possible that next year you take on new partners, and the new partners might dilute the equity, ownership equity, and it's no longer a minority or a women-owned business, as an example. Or that next year your income shot up because you had a breakthrough year and you're no longer a small business. So that's one of the reasons why these have to be renewed on a regular basis, just to make sure that it's consistent with what was told initially. But as far as I know, 5 years is the renewal.
So I will put the link that I just found. It's from business.nj.gov, so definitely the website of our state. Can I share my screen, or do you want me to just read it out loud?
Yeah, share your screen. I'll stop sharing.
Okay, so this is, all right, we'll try not to do this for every single question, because then it'll become too long. But again, here's the answer to our attendees' question. So all certifications need to verify their certification annually. Verify. Renewal frequency: first time applicants must renew a year later. The renewal lasts for 3 years. VOB are renewed every 3 years. DVOB renewed every 5 years.
That's great. Awesome information. Awesome.
Yep.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. And then actually, all right, the next question. Let's see. Let me share my screen again so you guys can see the questions as well. Okay. So the next question is, I'm starting a transportation company in 2 different types of transportation. One is NEMT and the other is medical carrier services. Do I need to form LLC for both? Well, this is a great question. The reason I think it's a great question is because it's very common. It's a common mistake that I see. And I'm only going to address it as a mistake for the vast majority. It's not always a mistake. Now, what determines whether you should open up a separate LLC? There is no fundamental, I guess, legal requirement that says once this happens, you have to have a separate LLC. You are allowed to sell multiple products and services under one company. So when you register your NICS code that we saw before, that says what's the product or service that this company is selling. And you can have multiple products or services underneath one LLC. But as my strong opinion, if the operation changes dramatically from one to the other, if the amount of resources that are required change a lot from one to the other, or if the risk profile, which is a very important one, changes a lot from one to the other, it might make sense to then separate the two. You can have a holding company, you can have a parent company that they both feed into. That could be another option. But if the risk profile and your insurance requirements are different enough, or if the marketing dollar that you're going to be spending are different enough, it would make more sense to have a separate LLC. Now, that's my opinion based on just this one question without asking any additional follow-up questions. So those are the things that I would look at, because it's very hard to distinguish the efficiency of your operation How many dollars am I spending on marketing versus how many dollars are coming back to the bottom line? If my profile of my customer is too distinct and I have two different customers in two different sides, and I'm putting together two different marketing plans, again, it's very difficult to see, where I'm catching traction and where I'm not catching traction. Same thing with the legal liability side. But no, it's not a legal requirement. You can do them both under one company. It just depends on what advice your tax attorney or your accountant will give you based on specifics to you. But they could be both similar within the same company. I mean, they're both similar, so they could be under the same LLC. It sounds like they would be similar enough to be under the same LLC, but again, nevertheless, it's very important to discuss that with an accountant or with an attorney. I hope that answers the question. Let's see. What are the positives and negatives of having a registered agent? Okay, so a registered agent would be accepting any official mails that come. For example, one of my side businesses require for me to travel a lot, so I'm not always home or by a PO box. So if I'm gone for a month or two, and a sensitive, document just came in from the state of New Jersey, the registered agent is the one who sees it and can act on it right away. That's definitely a positive. And the negative is that there's a little bit of a cost, but it's not a drastic cost, the registered agent, there are registered agent companies out there that will just kind of let you know, like, hey, this just came in the mail for you and you should be aware of it, whatever that official piece of mail happens to be. But those are the positive and negatives at a very high level of using a registered agent. Next question. As your company grows and you move into a different structure, sometimes the IRS could require that you get a new EIN. As long as it would require that you have a new EIN if it's a new product or service. Not necessarily if you're just changing from one to the other, but it could be depending on the case, and you are technically right. My question is my computer going to lose all the years of history and credit? My company, I'm sorry. Is my company going to lose all the years of history and credit every time I change my business structure? The short answer, unfortunately, is yes. If you do change your tax ID or corporate ID, you will lose some of that history. That's one of the reasons why it's not something that we take lightly. We speak to the right accountants and whatnot. But if we choose it could be done so you don't lose anything. So if we have the same tax ID, even though the corporate ID might change, then we don't lose any of that history. So that's very important to understand. Now, once we go into the corporation side, the corporation has its own entities. Now, this actually opens up a conversation that you should have with an accountant or with an accountant or with your tax advisor or finance advisor, which is the longevity of the company. If we choose a corporation, that company has the ability to outlast your own life. An LLC is tied to you, so it's an extension of you. If we do a corporation, it could live on without you. The Walt Disney Company is still around, even though Walt Disney himself is not around. Same thing with a lot of these other companies, like there are companies out there that are literally hundreds of years old, and they exist because they're not LLCs or they're not sole proprietorships. So and they can continue to borrow credit, and their credit does not, or their history does not get changed because of change of ownership of people. So that's something to consider. So those are questions that you would add. Hey, I want to make sure that my kids get my company without skipping a beat. What entity should I choose and when should I choose it? That's the question you would have with the accountants. But yeah, the answer your question briefly, it could if it's not done correctly. Let's see. Is there a way to authenticate your business to ensure it's not affiliated with a terrorist organization? Sorry, I can't remember the name of a particular form, but my accountant mentioned to me this. I think what we might be talking about is the BOI, which is the form that I mentioned a little while ago. And it's not, that's really it's not necessarily talking about terrorist organizations. It's just saying that these are the owners of the company, and there's a lot of transparency, that there is no secret person in the background who's holding equity into your company. That's the intent, which could potentially lead into somebody who's in the background who's receiving compensation that we're not aware of. That's the intent. So again, it's not necessarily saying certified terrorist free. It's more like this company has these 5 owners, these 7 owners, and this is all their information. Where in the states, no, where in the states of the states do we can modify or enter when we register SIC or NICS code? I'm not sure if I understand the question, but I think I do. It says when can we modify or enter? Okay, well, during the registration process, you have the ability, not the ability, you have the necessity to enter your codes. So when you're registering the company, it will ask you what your SIC code is, what your New Jersey business code is, your NAICS code is. And at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, bare minimum, you have the opportunity to file what's called the certificate of good standing. And at that opportunity, you can say, my company has changed in this way. We now sell these 2 new products, or we no longer sell those 2 old products. So that's when you can modify those NICS codes. If it happens anytime in the middle of the year, you can simply file a form, I think it's called NJ Reg. I think it's NJ Reg CL to be technical, where you can go in and update, the changes in your products and ownership of the company, and even address, because it's possible that you move from, 123 Main Street to, 789 Main Street, whatever it is. Okay. Next question. If an owner has a different LLC, or have a different LLC, or create different LLCs, every company has to be registered in FinCEN Bio. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. If an owner has a different LLC or can create a different LLC in the company. Yeah, if you can elaborate on that question, I'll come back to that in a moment. I'm not quite sure if I understand the question super well. Let's see, coming to the next question. If I form a company as an LLC, but I didn't get the EIN and I didn't register this in the state because I didn't use it, can I leave, I guess? Can I leave it like that for years until I decide to use it? What kind of payments or liabilities do I have to do? If I form the company, let me see. Okay, I think I get it. So what this person is asking is that they formed an LLC, just the registration, but didn't do the EIN or the state registration taxes. So it's very, very important to know what companies I have that are registered. If I have a company that's registered, there is a minimum registration filing fee at the end of the year, as you guys saw. That doesn't go away. So if you have a shelf company, which is what these companies are usually referred to as, I had created a company that I put it on the shelf. Bare minimum, you have a filing fee just to protect that name at the very minimum, so there is that. So you do have to file a fee at the end of the year. Make sure your accountant is aware of any companies that you have that are not closed. If you have a company that you did registered that you don't plan on using, make sure that you actually close that company. So you can go out back into the same website that I showed you guys, and you can actually get it officially closed so you don't have additional liabilities on that company. If you have a company, make sure that, if you have any assets, make sure that you're, using it as an asset. If not, it just becomes a liability, so it's just, by default. So, so I think I answered that question. Hopefully I did. Let me see. How can you avoid to have all the owners of an LLC to sign when an open checking account? Wait, how can you avoid to have all the owners of an LLC to sign when open a checking account or the LLC get a loan? Okay, I see. I understand the first part of the question. Okay. So if the person owns generally, and this is not a law, this is an average rule that most banks follow, but around 10%. If the membership owner I'm sorry, if the members' ownership in the company is less than 10%, they usually don't require their names to be on loans and or checking accounts. If they're just a passive owner in a company, so generally speaking, 9, 8, 7%, or and below is kind of the safe point where most companies will feel that their ownership doesn't have enough influence on the operations of the company. So therefore, we're not going to require their signature on all legal documents. So that's the general rule, but make sure that you communicate that question with the bank that you're working with. Because again, every bank has a little bit different guidelines. I have the experience that even when operating in an operating agreement stating that there will just be one person with all the power, yeah, it's same thing with what I just said. So even though you have it in your operating agreement that one person has the power to do all this, if on the paper the articles of formation say that this other person is half owner, 50% owner, then their name is on the dotted line of any legal documents because they have just enough influence, potential influence, even though that the operating agreement says otherwise. So it's just a technicality. The bank wants to make sure that they're protected, or whatever the partnership organization that you're with, because that also holds true for procurements and certifications and a bunch of other things. Let's see. If I already have a disaster loan for 230,000 with the SBA that I'm going to start paying in August for 30 years, can I still have access to capital? For example, working capital? Absolutely, absolutely. You can always get additional loans. So what they're going to be looking at is your cash flow capacity. They're going to say, do you have enough money coming in to take on this and something else? So they'll calculate what your monthly payment is going to be on that $230,000 SBA disaster loan. And it should be relatively low because it's amortized over 30 years. And then they'll say, if this payment is, I'm going to make up a number, $500 a month, they'll take a look at all your other expenses. And if your other expenses are $1,000 a month, as an example, all your rents and salaries and whatnot. So I need to make sure that you have at least more than $1,500 a month in cash flow in order to justify borrowing money. And the easy number, if you guys want to do a little bit deeper dive into this a little bit later on, there is a ratio called the debt service coverage ratio, or DSC or DSCR, depending on who's putting it together. And it says that you need to make 125% of your obligations in order to qualify for a loan. That's an easy number. So look at all your financial obligations, calculate what 125% is of that number, and that's the minimum that you need to have, bare minimum, to qualify for additional loans. How do you get a mentor? Oh, there's a ton of ways to get a mentor, but it all comes down to networking. So networking through organized groups that you have in your community. It could be a chamber of commerce. It could be going to events that we put together or the NJEDA puts together. It could be just finding what I personally like. Find a business that is probably being sold. That means that and then look into it. If it's being sold because the person is getting ready to retire, that might be a good mentor. And just like anything, you're going to be knocking on a bunch of doors and getting mostly rejections, but every once in a while, there might be someone that you can kind of communicate with. If going back to that example of pizzeria, if I want to open up a pizzeria, I might look up pizzerias for sale. If I find one where the person is just getting ready to retire, I might want to buy his, as an example. I'll buy his company or her company. And then that person could stay on board as a mentor. Even after ownership transfer happens 100% and I'm full ownership, they might stay on board. I might give them a little, side job. And hey, come in and just give me advice every once in a while. That's a great mentor. The companies that I've worked with that have the most active, long-lasting mentors did something similar to that. Let's see, we got a couple more, 3 more questions, I think, or 4 more questions. Let's see. If you have different businesses, hold on, wait, just move. If you have a different business in different industries, do I have to have a mentor for each one, or do I have mentor? No, you don't have to have a mentor. A mentor is just it's a good person to go to that says, how did he or she run this business successfully for years, or a business successfully for years? So, and so it could be one business mentor in general. because they have just strategy in mind. But if your businesses require a lot of I don't know, knowledge that it's specific to that business in order for them to be effective, then maybe you might have multiple. But it's like having friends, you can have a great relationship with 1 or 2 friends, but it's very difficult to have a great relationship with 20 or 40 or 50 friends, So that's the way I look at that one for mentors. Once the next question, once registration is complete, do all business need to register with FinCEN by I see. Now I see the question. So it might be the same question from before, just in a different wording, but yeah, every business needs to have its own BOI. That is a requirement. So if there is a separate corporate ID, then it has to have a separate business ownership information document to be filled out. Also, if the business is certified by the state, does it need to be certified by federal as well? Certified how? That would be the question. If it's certified because of what we're talking about, those business certifications, WBE, the VBEs, no, those are done at a state level. So the moment that you cross the state lines and you want to do business in New York or Pennsylvania, they have their own certification processes. Now, in most cases, there are streamlined applications that say, hey, you already got registered in New Jersey as a minority-owned business or a women-owned business, a veteran-owned business. Show me the application and we'll just double check some things and then give it to you here in New York as well, as an example. Port Authority has their own too. So if you want to use it for Port Authority, you have to get it again for Port Authority. So if that's the certification that you guys are talking about, or that this person who asked this question is asking, then that's the answer. So in other ways, then no, like if you're being certified as what's called an 8A business, where you can compete for larger federal contracts, that's one time at a federal level. So it depends on which certification we're looking at. And I think it might be the last question. Let's say it says, for a small business, how do you decide how to pay yourself, and if you and or your partner are the only persons on the staff right now? That's a question for an accountant, because the answer is dependent upon your personal situation. So there's no one size fits all answer. Bare minimum, general advice is for your financial modeling purposes, for your performance, your projections that you created. What kind of revenue do I have to hit in order for this to make sense for me? I would account for a salary, for myself. I need to pay myself a minimum of $100 a week, whatever the number happens to be, $1,000 a week. So I'm going to add that to the expenses and say that the business needs to generate enough money to pay this and all the other expenses of the business, before dedicating an actual draw. Now, perhaps the easiest way is, as an LLC, your bottom line is your income. So if the LLC and you guys just registered the company made a profit this quarter of, I want to make up a number and say $1,000, $1,000 is what's recognized as your personal income automatically. And that will then be used for calculations at the bank, let's say, to see how much money you have to pay your rent, your mortgage, your own personal expenses, whatever they happen to be. And does the business have enough cash flow for the business to pay its own expenses? At which point do you pull the trigger and say, I now want to have a corporation subchapter S with a weekly salary? Generally speaking, once you're cash flow positive, there are situations where that's not always true, where I am building a company, a lot of .coms, a lot of technology companies, that might be early on. They'll say, well, in order for me to dedicate full-time effort, I need to have this much funding that goes to me to pay my expenses weekly in order for me to dedicate full-time effort, even though the company might not be cash flow positive yet. They're going to say, this is what we need from investors, or this is what we need for my own personal budget, that I set aside money for. But the general rule is, don't stress the company. until the company has the positive cash flow to pay off whatever the expenses happen to be. Hopefully that answers the question. But again, that's a question you can do a, I don't know, hour long conversation with your SBDC advisor. Last question. Let's see. Once you're registered with your state, can you do business in other states? So the technical answer is maybe, and maybe is because how is that other business being conducted with other states? If I sell, I have an Etsy shop as an example, and I make trinkets, I make, purses or something. I make, cell phone accessories. I can ship that anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world for that matter that I want to. So I don't have to be in that state to do business in that state. I can sell my services and mail them anywhere I want, or make my product and mail it anywhere I want. So for that situation, no, I don't have to be registered in another state, and I can do business across the entire country. But if I'm going to have a transaction, and that's the legal part, if I'm going to have a transaction that takes place outside of New Jersey state lines, then I have to be registered in that state or have permission from that state to do business there. So a transaction is usually defined as active sales in that state or collecting payments in that state. If I go to another state and I set up a little table, and someone gives me money in my hand and I give them a product, I conduct a business in that state. If I'm not registered in that state and I don't have permission to be there, then I'm not allowed to be there. And that's a potential violation. So the easy way around it is either have a conversation with your accountant, with your attorney, with your SBDC advisor. If it's a corporation, you are allowed to do business across the entire country. If it's a LLC, that other state has to have a reciprocal relationship with your home state in order for that to happen. In most states that are around New Jersey, the answer is yes. New York, New Jersey, they work really well together. So we just kind of give them a heads up, and we file what's called a foreign entity certificate, and saying, hey, a foreign entity from New Jersey is going to be in New York to do business every once in a while, or always, or once, for a trade show, whatever it happens to be. There are also permits that you can get, like a trade show. If I'm flying into Vegas and I want to sell something at my trade show in Vegas, I don't have to register in Vegas. I can get a vendor's permit for that trade show. But there are other options too. I can either form another LLC there, which is a bit more complicated. Or if I'm going to move from New Jersey to another state, I might be able to actually move my LLC from New Jersey to another state. It all depends on the nuances, I guess, of what you're trying to do. But I hope that answers the question. And look at that, exactly 1:30, almost 1:30. So hope that answers all the questions. I don't know if Uzma, you can give me a little feedback if I left one unanswered or not well answered.
Nope, I think you answered all of them, and we made good time, 1:25.
Awesome.
So that concludes our Q&A session. That also concludes Ryan's webinar speaker presentation for today. Thank you so much, Ryan, as always, for doing this for us. Let me share my screen, and here is what we have upcoming. So upcoming webinar happening this Thursday, April 4th, Intro to SBIR SUTR Grants, $2 million plus for your tech innovation for 0% equity. What could that be? So this is part of our NJSBDC Tech Series. David Lenz, who is one of our tech team consultants. So if this is relevant for you, or you think a friend or family member could benefit from this, then please forward this invite to them, tech_innovation.eventbrite.com, 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. As always, again, Thursday, April 4th. One other, not a webinar, but in-person event that's happening is the application walkthrough workshop for the New Jersey Treasury Minority Certification for MWSBBE and LGBTQ+. That was a mouthful. Certifying your business provides access to local and state contract opportunities, grants and resources, low-interest loans. And this is an in-person event. I know it says Jersey City. You might be wondering, why is that so vague? Well, when you fill out the registration form, it'll tell you the exact location. It is at 1 p.m. April 24th, 2024. Again, if this is relevant to you or someone that you know could benefit from this, feel free to forward this to them. And with that, we are done for today. We are here to support you. NJSBDC has helped 15,000 plus small business owners grow, start, grow, and thrive. We've been doing this for 45 years now. We're entering our 46th year this year. If you'd like to talk to a consultant, a startup consultant, or any other consultant from NJSBDC, go to njsbdc.com. Our website is a great resource, and feel free to check it out. Take out 5 minutes of your day maybe and do so. And I'll see you on Thursday. Again, thank you, Ryan, so much. Thank you all so much for attending. Stay safe, take care. See you on Thursday. Bye.
Thanks, guys.